All right, welcome back. We are very excited about this next session. It's focused on AI, artificial intelligence. We have an expert presenter here who's going to enlighten us all. It's already been some good questions and commentary on AI today, which I think is awesome. Which leads right into our panel. Dr. Jerry Kane is the C. Herman and Mary Virginia Terry Chair in Business Administration and Head of the Department of Management Information at the University of Georgia Terry College of Business. I got through all that.
Good job.
He is a globally recognized expert on digital strategy, helps leaders navigate technological disruption. He is an AIS Fellow, a recent Harvard Business School visiting scholar, co-author of 2 acclaimed MIT Press books called The Technology Fallacy and gold medal winning book, The Transformation Myth. His insights on digital transformation have been featured in Harvard Business Review, MIT Sloan Management Review, and the Wall Street Journal. Please help me in welcoming Dr. Jerry Kane.
Thank you. Tyler makes me sound very smart, so I appreciate that. And you may be alumni, but you act still like undergrads when you say it's a 5-minute break and it turns into a 15-minute break. So keep up the good work. So my name is Jerry Kane. I have been at Terry for about 3.5 years now. Before that, I was at Boston College for 15 years. But I'm a child of Atlanta, so I grew up in Roswell. I was actually the school mascot for the Roswell High School. Anybody know what that is? The Green Hornets, and you have not lived until you've run around a football game in August wearing a big green furry bee costume. And then my PhD is from Emory, where my daughter is in school now, and thrilled to be at University of Georgia, where I'm the head of the MIS department. And MIS, we have sort of been leading the charge on AI in Terry. We've just launched a new undergraduate AI certificate. Our first cohort, we had 213 applicants and admitted 100 of those students across 10 Terry different majors. So we are dealing with everybody at AI with Terry. We have also newly launched or rebranded. We had a master's degree, still have a master's degree called the Master of Business Technology. And we've now renamed and repurposed that to a Master's of Science in Business and Artificial Intelligence. Unfortunately, long name, but if you knew the number of meetings I had to go in and sit in to decide whether it was the Master of Artificial Intelligent Business or the Master of Business and Artificial Intelligence, you would be stunned. And so I spend most of my time now talking to audiences like this, companies, Terry staff about AI, what it is, and how to use it more effectively. And so we're going to condense what is usually about a day-long presentation into 45 minutes. So we're going to keep moving on, going to hit the highlights. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to raise your hand. I'm happy to talk about whatever you guys would like to talk about. But hopefully we'll demystify AI a little bit for you, as well as equip you to use it perhaps in your job or in your personal life in more advanced ways. So, first question, we hear a lot about artificial intelligence. You can't turn on the news or open a newspaper without hearing about artificial intelligence. But most people struggle to define it. What is artificial intelligence? This is the interactive portion of the program.
Large language models.
So large language models is a subset of AI, and most of the time when we're talking about AI, that is what people are talking about today. So this is the Claude, this is the ChatGPT, this is the Google Gemini, but actually LLMs are a very small part of what artificial intelligence is. So I'll come back. So good answer, partial credit. What is AI?
Thinking.
You've already answered.
Would it just be like intelligence from something that's not a living creature?
Yeah, I think that's close enough. Any human cognitive task performed by a computer system, from chess playing programs to voice assistants, all of these things. So does this mean a calculator is AI? Sure, why not? Does this mean Google Maps is AI? Sure. So AI is all around us. But most of the time when we're talking now about AI, anybody know when the term AI was coined? Well, you've been in my class, you know the answers. Cheating, Lexi. Anyway, you're not being graded. School's over. Earlier than the 70s.
After the war,
50s, 1950s, it came along that this was the concept. And really when we're talking about AI, we're talking about a subset of AI called machine learning. And what makes machine learning different is it is a computer program that is trained on data rather than built from code. So 10 years ago, when we wanted to build a computer system, you'd have to go into Java, you'd have to go into the programming language, and you would have to tell the computer exactly what to do in any given situation. There are some pros to that, in that you have a lot of control. You have a lot of ability to tell the computer exactly what you want to do. There are some drawbacks to that. Some things can be hard to explain. Image recognition is one. Now, how do you explain what a cat looks like? Well, it's furry, it's sort of small, it has ears. Well, that could be a dog, that could be a fox, that could be all sorts of things. How do we know? So what machine learning does is just shows it a bunch of examples. And once you give it all of this data, it can learn from the data to make inferences and can help identify. So it's hard to explain what a cat looks like, but if you can show a picture if you can show a computer 1,000 pictures of cats, it can figure it out. So that's really the big difference, is computer software trained on data rather than built from code, not rocket science. So why all the hype now? A couple of things have happened. First is we finally now have enough computing power to do machine learning at scale. So it was invented in the 50s, and they didn't have it. There's a great TED talk by a guy named Jeff Dean, who's the head of Google Cloud. He did his doctoral thesis in the mid-90s on artificial intelligence. And he said, I've got a 32-core Pentium processor. Surely I have enough computing power to do artificial intelligence now, to do machine learning. He did the math and realized he would need 1,000,000 times more computing power than he had in the mid-90s. What's the good news for us today? We have 1,000,000 times more computing power. Most of us have 1,000,000 times more computing power in our pocket. So computing power has increased. Second is data. We have so much more data thanks to these things. It's been estimated, I think it's IBM estimated, that 90% of the data that's ever been created in human history has been created in the last 2 years. And that was true 2 years before that, and that was true 2 years before that. So we have processing power and we have a ton of data. And because of those things, we now have developed new approaches to AI. So you'll see things like large language models. You'll see things like convolutional neural networks. You'll see things like generative adversarial networks, which you guys don't care about. But all this is to say, LLMs are one small subset of all the innovation that's happening in AI. Now, a very important thing to address is most of the time when I talk to audiences and I say, what is AI? And this is why I do this intro thing to make sure we all are on the same page. I'll hear, well, it's the Terminator, it's HAL 9000, it's her, it's science fiction versions of artificial intelligence. And those scientific versions are based in something called artificial general intelligence. So what is artificial? We've defined artificial intelligence as any cognitive task that a human would do performed by a machine. What would artificial general intelligence be?
Like an autonomous task performed.
Well, so it's nearing human level intelligence. So if we go back to our examples, if a calculator is an AI, is calculator better at arithmetic than you are? Yeah, it does. That's what it does. Is Google Maps better at navigation than you? Yeah, that's what it does. I don't go anywhere without Google Maps. Is Google Maps good at arithmetic? No. Is a calculator, can they get you home from Buckhead on a Friday afternoon traffic? No. So AI, so that's what we call artificial specific intelligence or weak AI, where AI is good at very narrow tasks. And that's largely what we have. LLMs give us this illusion of that it's moving towards artificial general intelligence, but it's still a long way away. Can ChatGPT navigate you home after here? No. Can ChatGPT fold a shirt for you? No. There's all sorts of things that a 3-year-old can do that ChatGPT can't do. And the fun thing, and so a lot of the hype now around AI is in this belief that artificial general intelligence is right around the corner. I'm a bit more of a skeptic. If you look at the literature, artificial general intelligence has been 20 years away for the last 70 years. In the 50s, they say, we'll get there in the 70s. In the 70s, we'll get there in the 90s. And they say and we're getting closer, but I still think we're a long, long way from that. And I think the reason we see a lot of hype and a lot of talk about artificial general intelligence is OpenAI needs to raise a lot of money to build data centers. And you get more excited if they say, we're only 18 months away from artificial general intelligence. Give us another $1 billion to do that. Oh, I'm sorry. Well, now we're, a year later, now we're 18 months away from artificial general intelligence. Give me another $1 billion. So I think the hype is intentionally generated. So there are 3 major types of AI learning: supervised learning, reinforcement learning, and unsupervised learning. We're going to go through those very quickly. So supervised learning, I gave away my thing, that's image recognition, where you go through and you take a data set, like images, and humans go through and add a label. This is a dog, this is a cat, this is a dolphin, this is a human. And over time, then the computers can take this data set and say, oh, okay, this is a dog, this is a cat. So right now, AI is better at image recognition than people are. That was true in about 2018. And so when we see examples like muffins or chihuahuas, can be difficult to tell, but AI is better at this than we are. Supervised learning, image recognition came from a woman named Fei-Fei Li at Stanford. Her whole doctoral dissertation was getting people to tag millions of images so the computer could recognize it. When you go to a website and it asks you to prove that you're a human, what does it ask you to do? Tag the motorcycles, or the stop signs, or the crosswalks. What are you doing when you prove that you're a human? You are training autonomous vehicle algorithms. You're helping the Waymos identify crosswalks and pedestrians and motorcycles. In a previous generation of CAPTCHA, what would it do before we were asked to identify motorcycles? That what?
Slide the puzzle piece.
Okay, that one I have seen. I don't have a good answer for that one. Identify the letters. What were we training with that? Text recognition. It was all the stuff that the character scanners couldn't pick up, so they said, let's give it to humans, we'll tag it, and the computers will figure it out. When I started teaching at Boston College in 2006, Google launched something called Goog 411. Anybody remember, this is the trouble with teaching young alumni, anybody remember what 411 was? Information. You would get on the phone, you'd call an operator who would look a phone number up in a phone book for you and charge you an absurd amount of money in $1985. When Goog 411 came up, you would speak, I'm looking for the number for Professor Kane in Athens. Oh, did you mean Dr. Crane? No. Boop, press 2. What were we doing? Why did Google do Goog 411? Training voice recognition software. Early days of Facebook, we were asked to tag our friends. What were we doing? Facial recognition. They've been harnessing us to do supervised learning for a long time. Then we have something called reinforcement learning. And this is where we just ask the computer to sort of play itself in video games. I normally have a video of this that I would show, but one, we're low on time, and two, if I try to get out in it, I'm not sure I'll get back to my presentation. And so what it would do is when it plays this game, it just, all the Google programmer said is your job, this is like an 82 game called Breakout, your job is to get the score to go as high as possible. And you can control this little paddle. And after about an hour, it acts like a drunken toddler. It just moves it around. It can't quite figure things out. After about 4 hours of training, it starts to figure out how to play the game. And after about 8 hours of training, it actually develops strategies. So reinforcement learning is just asking AI, here's the conditions, run a bunch of simulations and figure out what works. And then last but not least is unsupervised learning. This is LLMs. This is Amazon. People who bought this also bought that. How does Amazon do that? How does Amazon make product recommendations? Search it. Well, market basket. Go ahead. Yeah, so it's. I look at, of the 20 people who bought this item, 18 of them also bought this. So maybe I should start recommending that. So it's just, unsupervised learning is just looking for patterns in the data that might be meaningful. And this is what LLMs do. They just have a bunch of words. And it looks for patterns in those words and in those sentences and those paragraphs. And it says, if you ask me a question with these words, I'm going to bet the answer is going to be these words. And does it do a pretty good job? Yeah, sort of a scary good job. Last thing here, before we get into some of the hands-on stuff, I'm doing pretty good, and I just lost my nice microphone that I'll put back on, and hopefully that, we'll do it that way. Perfect. AI is not the problem. Technology moving quickly is not the problem that we're dealing with in the business school. The problem is technology moves at an exponential rate. And then individuals adopt that technology more slowly than the technology changes. Businesses adapt to that technology more slowly than individuals adopt it. And last but not least, public policy moves slowest of all. So when we teach about AI in the MIS department, we're focused on this entire thing. We're not just teaching the underlying technology, we're teaching about how individuals adopt it, how businesses adapt to it, and then how public policy assimilates it. Last but not least, before we get our hands dirty with the stuff, that this is something out of the consulting firm Gartner, or the research firm Gartner, the Gartner hype cycle. And they say that technology goes through a very particular set of patterns. First, we have the technology trigger. Something new comes up. And then everybody says this is going to change the world. And we have this peak of inflated expectations. And then we say, maybe ChatGPT isn't as good as we thought it was. Maybe there are some downsides to this. And we go then through a trough of disillusionment. And when we get to the bottom of that trough of disillusionment, a couple of companies figure out how to really leverage this technology for advantage. And we then go to the slope of enlightenment and the plateau of productivity. Now, this is almost certainly wrong, but it's helpful. Because if you look at the NASDAQ stock index from 1997 to 2007, it looks almost exactly like this. What do we define in that day, that time from 97 to 2007? Dot-com boom and bust. People said the internet was going to change everything. Then it was like, what are we thinking that Walmart's going to beat, or Amazon's going to beat Walmart? No way. And then we go to the trough of disillusionment, and then we figure it out. And companies like Facebook and Google and Amazon and Microsoft all figure out how to leverage this technology for advantage. So now I apologize. I thought I'd change this slide. I did this most recently for Coca-Cola. Like just last week, and I forgot to update the slides. So we're going to talk about prompt engineering. So when I'm talking about generative AI, the analogy I often use is it's a lot like training a dog. Has anybody trained a dog before? So if you've done that, you know that half the battle is getting the dog to do what it's supposed to do. The other half of the battle is teaching the person how to talk to the dog so the dog understands what you want it to do. I think that's true of generative AI. Half the battle is having the AI do the thing. The other half is teaching you how to talk to the AI so you get the right results out of it. And that's what we're going to spend our time doing. Skip. So the first thing I do, and I'm giving you the Cliff Notes version, not a lot of preamble. We're getting right into it. One thing I use is something called the critical architecture. And so when I put in a prompt into generative AI, and you're welcome to have these slides, I make sure I put in 8 different things. The context. What is the background information about the strategic goals and competitive pressures? The role, assigning a persona to frame AI's perspective and knowledge base. Intent, stating the ultimate business objective. Task, core directive using strong action verbs to specify what AI must do. Instruction, applying constraints and guardrails to shape the response. Criteria, defining the format to make the output immediately usable. Audience, specifying the recipient to tailor the tone and complexity, and then learning. So true story, when I teach my executive MBA class in this very building, now all of the content I use for that class is AI generated. Because like regular articles, they're either dated and really good or very cutting edge and nichey. And so I use AI to bring all of those together in a coherent narrative. And when I do this, I say the context is I'm teaching an executive MBA class at the University of Georgia. Role, I am a professor. I just upload all the nice things he said about me to start off this thing. Intent, I'm trying to do a series of white papers for this, et cetera, et cetera. And when I can put all of that information in, I get much better results than if I just said, hey, do a white paper on AI. Another example is something called few-shot prompting. So few-shot prompting is just when you give it examples of what output you want. So for instance, my first year as department head, we have to do merit reviews or performance reviews for faculty. It took me 30 to 40 hours to do all that paperwork. Year 2, I went to generative AI and I said, here's what I did for this faculty last year. Here is the new information that I have for them. Can you now write a new report factoring this new information that looks sort of like last year's report? Instantaneous. What took 30 to 40 hours now is down to about 10 hours. Just because I still did all the evaluations, the work was still my own, but the process of writing it up now became magically instant. And it worked because I could give it examples of what I wanted. So when you can show examples, it does a lot better. Second is step-by-step reasoning. The more you can break tasks down into subtasks, the better AI is going to do. So if I said, write a book on digital transformation, that book would suck, pardon my French. It would be bland, it would be average, it would be mediocre. But if I said, okay, let's create a table of contents. What are the 10 chapters that should be in this book? Now let's look at chapter 1. What should be in this chapter? Give me an outline. Okay, let's work on the introduction. Let's work on the second paragraph. Can you throw in an example that would fit in here? If I can break it down into those subtasks and use AI to augment my own intelligence, my own expertise, it does way better. I am a better writer than AI, but me with AI is much better than me without AI. And that's a lesson, when I talk to my students, the lesson I teach them each and every semester, and I believe this, AI will not replace managers, but managers who use AI will replace managers who don't use AI. AI will not replace accountants, but accountants who use AI will replace accountants who don't use AI. And doctors and lawyers and financial advisors and ... I think this is going to be a skill set that supercharges us and supercharges your Terry education, not replaces it. And then advanced technique number 3, this is what sort of blows people's minds, is meta prompting. So asking AI to help you write a better prompt. What can I do? So when I do the critical framework, I rarely fill it out myself. I upload a spreadsheet and I say, hey, using the critical framework, how can you improve this prompt? It gives me a page and a half of output. I put that page and a half back into AI. I get much better results. So asking AI to help you write a better proposal or a better prompt is very effective. And then when you do all this, what I recommend is develop a prompt library. So save your work. I have a folder on my desktop that says prompts I've used. And when I write something for executive MBAs, I save those prompts. And next year, rather than using the same content I generated, I'm going to go back and I'm going to go through that same process to generate a fresh set of content so it's updated. But I don't have to go back and start over. I can just put it back into the AI. So now we're going to do a fun exercise with the 15 minutes we have left called Storrowing. I have to owe thanks to my colleague, Dr. Eleanor Karahana, who sort of gave me this exercise, and I've been using it productively ever since. So I came from Boston. In Boston, there's a phenomenon called storrowing, where trucks hit bridges. It happens a lot. It leads the news in August because it happens so frequently. And what we're gonna do is go through an exercise, and if I were doing this with a company, and I've done this with lots of companies, I would get you in your small groups. I'd say, work on these problems together, come back, report back. That's the part that takes all day. Here, Cliff Notes version. I'm just gonna give you the answers. So first is we're gonna go through problem understanding, like how do we understand the problem using AI? And then part 2, how do we generate new solutions? So one thing we can do is ask it to help us understand data sets. So I was able to find some open source data on New York bridge strikes as an example and say, can you tell me the structure of this data? Date, borough, direction, main street, cross street, type, truck route, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, it breaks it down for us. Then I can say, can you make me a line chart of bridge strikes by borough by year through 2022? Give that data, magically does it. I have stopped using Excel for graphs now because I have to remember, oh, how do I do a line chart in Excel? What's the right format? How do I go back? What a pain in the neck. Now, upload the data set, say, ChatGPT, can you generate a line chart for me on this? Magic. It just happens. And it's great, and it's easy, and I don't have to remember the Excel formulas. Then, ChatGPT, can you take a map of New York City and plot the bridge strikes by latitude and longitude onto this map? So when I was, first time I did this exercise, it was with executive MBAs 2 years ago. It was Hurricane Helene, so I went to virtual and I had to figure out things to teach them because we couldn't do my normal interactive stuff, and we were doing this, and one of the executives said, oh, I'm from New York. What's happening here is it's the Cross Bronx Freeway or da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. They said, oh yeah, this is exactly what's happening here. So visualizing data, mashing up data sets so we can see things that we wouldn't have seen otherwise. Now we get into the fun stuff. So asking AI, one thing generative AI is very good at is assuming personas or roles. So there's a great TED Talk from the founder of Khan Academy who really talks about how he's using AI to enhance Khan Academy. And he talks about how he asks ChatGPT to play the role of Jay Gatsby from The Great Gatsby. And you ask, he takes on the accent and the tones and the speaking cadence. The ChatGPT, you can ask him about the green light. Oh, the green light represents my ambition and da-da-da-da-da. It's really good at playing Jay Gatsby. Based on what you know about AI at this point, why is ChatGPT really good at playing Jay Gatsby? Sort of. I mean, yes, a little bit deeper. Yeah.
The amount of examples that it has pulled from
What examples does it have in its trading data set? Everything. Every doctoral thesis, every Cliff Notes, every paper, every Reddit archive talking about Jay Gatsby. Everything that has ever been written, ChatGPT knows about Jay Gatsby. And it can take that with pattern recognition and say, I'm going to play this role. I'm going to play this part. One of the most effective uses of generative AI I see among executives is they put together their own virtual board of directors and say, my board of directors consists of Steve Jobs, Mother Teresa, Abraham Lincoln, Barack Obama, and Steve Jobs, if I didn't say Steve Jobs already. And so I'm facing this career question. Board of directors, what should I do? Well, Steve Jobs will step in and say, I think you should do this. Mother Teresa would say, you need to come in and do this. Why is it good at playing these people? Because it knows everything that's ever been created by these people and about these people. Fun fact, in my class, one of our main deliverables, a blog post, and one of my students put together a Prof. Kane bot, uploaded a bunch of my writings, interviewed me, and interviewed Prof. Kane bot. The scary thing, it was a better me than I was. Why? Well, it's seen everything I've written, and it can replicate that very quickly. Me, I didn't have time. I had 25 other things to do. Now, would it fool my wife? No, because that stuff's not in its training data set. Would it fool my dog? No, but it can be the Prof. Kane persona because it knows everything I've ever written. So here, if we ask ChatGPT to play roles, interview Chris, a driver who got started in Boston. Hi, Chris, thanks for agreeing to speak with me. I know your experience of getting started must have been stressful. And we go on through this interview. Interviewer, thanks so much for sharing your experience, Chris. It's helpful to understand what you went through and what could be improved. Chris, no problem. No one has to go through what I did. Ask it to play roles. Ask it to be a board of directors. Ask it to be an interviewer. If you're going for an interview, say, I am interviewing with Salesforce. Can you come up with a list of questions that I should prepare? And then record that on Zoom, feed it back into ChatGPT, and ask it to analyze your responses. It's great at playing that role. My son is in mock trial. He uploaded all the case notes and asked it to play the role of opposing counsel. It's very good at roles. Another thing about ChatGPT, it's been to business school. It knows everything you've been taught at Terry. So you can say, please do a 5 whys analysis of getting started in Boston. The 5 whys techniques is a method used to explore the root cause of a problem by asking why multiple times. Here's a 5 whys analysis. First why do drivers hit low clearance bridges on Stora Drive? Drivers are unaware. We go on, 5 whys. Root cause, drivers are unaware of the risk posed by low clearance bridges because they do not have the proper tools like truck-specific GPS or sufficient warning signs. It can do the analysis that you've been taught at Terry, like that. So now those are some problem understanding approaches. Now we would go through and say, okay, what solutions can we come up with? So this is another favorite of mine. This is synthetic subjects is like taking personas at scale. ChatGPT put together a focus group of hypothetical panel of 30 Bostonians, representative of Boston's demographics. Please test them with 2 messages for getting drivers to stop starring. Message A, heads up, save your top, and message B, measure twice, drive once. Ask their preference. Tell me for each of the 30 Bostonians which method they preferred and why. Then give me the totals for which method was preferred. And you know what? So we got a panel. 6 people 18 to 24, 10 25 to 34, 7 35 to 49, 15 white, 6 black, 4 Hispanic, and they give us the answers. So Amanda, age 25, software engineer, white, preferred heads up, save your top. Why? She liked the humor and thought it was attention grabbing. Marcus, age 40, construction worker, black, preferred measure twice, drive once. Why? It felt more practical and directly relevant to the issue. And we have 30 of these. The results is measure twice, drive once is 16. Heads up, save your top is 14. Is this correct? Who knows? Who cares? I would not go run a product based on this. But as a quick and dirty way to get some intelligence right up front and to say, don't waste 30 a focus group. Let's make sure I work out the bugs with generative AI before I send something live. Let me test some ideas. Let's explore some hypotheses. Another thing, again, it's been to business school. In the spirit of brainstorming, please suggest 5 really terrible ideas for solving sorrowing and then 1 good idea deriving from each terrible idea. It's a classic brainstorming technique. Terrible idea. Install trampoline-like surfaces on every low clearance bridge so trucks bounce off instead of getting stuck. Good idea, use physical barriers or detection systems such as hanging chains or laser sensors well before the bridges to alert drivers that their vehicle is too tall, giving them time to stop or reroute. My favorite is number 5. Terrible idea, hire teams of people to run alongside large trucks with flags, warning drivers when they're approaching a bridge. Good idea, use technology to integrate truck height specific information to rental agreements and have truck rental companies provide specialized GPS systems to all customers as a part of the rental process. Terrible ideas, good ideas. Again, are these right? No. Can they help spur your thinking? Can they help push your creativity? Can they give you sort of resources that you wouldn't have had otherwise at the click of a button or the snap of a finger? Absolutely. So why wouldn't we be using this in business in this way? So we'll have a couple of minutes for questions when we're done. So I just want to end up here. So as you're using generative AI, some techniques that I use, always push it. Ask it to do better. So what can I do to improve this? And I go through that cycle when I'm writing or when I'm doing something. What can I do to improve it? Until the ideas, the suggestions it gives me are pretty bad. And I'm like, okay, this is where I stop. Using my own judgment. Ask it to explain why it got an answer. Say, you gave me this, why? And it can uncover some of the reasons, and you can say, oh, now I see where the learning is, or maybe my prompt was bad, or et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I can rephrase if needed. Invite it to take a certain perspective or persona. You're an interviewer for this company that I'm trying to get a job with. You are a boss, or you're somebody that I'm trying to convince, a sales pitch that I'm trying to make. Play the role of the client. Play the role of Steve Jobs. Play the role of Marty Kagan, who's a big product management guy. A lot of times when I did this at Coke, they said they ask, so they're doing like a product roadmap. They go and they take the materials that the guy wrote that they're based on. What would Marty Kagan say about this problem I'm dealing with? Because it's been trained on everything Marty Kagan's wrote. You have Marty Kagan or a facsimile on your desktop. Ask him with a critical lens. Ask it to organize its response, bucket the answers into 3 categories, break your questions into parts. I will first ask you this and then this. It does a better job if you can break it down. If the answer is poor, reframe your question, rephrase it. Sometimes you get very different answers. Give it constraints for under $50,000. How would you accomplish this? Give it examples of good answers. Here are my performance reviews. Here's letters of recommendation I've written in the past. All of these help make it serve me better. Provide it some data and ask it to hypothesize. ChatGPT, I've noticed sales have gone down in my region. Do you have any guesses as to why? Is it going to be right? Who knows? Can it spur you on some leads where you dig more in yourself? Absolutely. Ask it to apply methods or frameworks that you use. I inadvertently cut a slide or 2 that would be like things you need to be wary of. As you use generative AI, we talk about it in terms of a smart intern. It's very good at basic tasks. It doesn't have context. Would you tell the smart intern to run a strategic plan and then just do it without you reviewing it? Absolutely not. This is great at coming up with basics that then you use your expertise to validate, to amend, to modify, to reject. It's only prompting your thinking. It's a tool to help you. It is not going to do the job for you in most situations. Your expertise is critical. Don't go say, well, Professor Kane said I could just dump this into ChatGPT. No, then you'll get fired. I don't want that. But if you can say, this is going to supercharge the way my expertise, it doesn't replace me as a writer, it supercharges my writing. It doesn't replace me as a strategic thinker, it supercharges my strategic thinking. As we're running out of time, just sort of how I am using Gen AI in my teaching. First, I don't just allow my students to use generative AI, I require them to. And I require them to use it in a different way each time and reflect on how they're using it. And so they get, like, there's the assumption that kids these days know how to use generative AI. They don't. Their first assignment, and this is true of every semester I've taught, their first assignments suck. By the end of the semester, they're doing amazing things because they're unlocking its potential and they're coming up with creative examples. And fun fact, I've used this both with undergrads and executive MBAs, both with promising results. In fact, I got an email this week from one of my executive MBA students that wrote me, said, I've launched a company based on what you taught me about generative AI. It's a spice company. I came up with the spice mix. I came up with the logo. I came up with the distribution plan. I used generative AI to do all this, and the product is now live on Amazon. I'm like, that's cool. Creating course content. I told you about this. If you have an experiment to do with the deep research feature in Gemini or Claude, it does a great job at coming up with a 20-page summary of a topic you need to do. I was teaching my executive MBAs. It was Georgia-Alabama weekend. And I said, can you do a history of the Georgia-Alabama rivalry? Put it in there. Takes about 20 minutes to come out. It had a 20-page history going through the Bear Bryant era and the dawn of Kirby Smart and all that, like everything you needed to know about Georgia-Alabama. Did on its own. Great way for research. And then one thing I'm doing right now is my new experiment is when we do a lot of current event discussions in my class. I record them all. I take the transcript from Zoom. I put it into generative AI. I prefer Gemini right now for various reasons, but I'm not saying that's the best, it's just the one I am using. And I say, using this transcript from my student discussion, can you do a LinkedIn article that's engaging and that will educate my follower base? And those things have been taken off like wildfire. I have AI faculty from around the world saying, these are really great insights. Chris Cornwell, the head of the Ivester Institute, I saw him the other day. He's like, I really like your blog posts. I said, they're all AI generated. He's like, I suspected, but tell me how you get there. And so it's the process. It's not putting words in my students' mouths. It's taking our intellectual property, our intellectual creativity, and packaging it in a way. If you want to follow this, follow me on LinkedIn, Jerry Kane. I'm publishing them like pretty much every week. You can see, and you know now where it's coming from. I'm just doing this, recording it, asking it to translate. It takes me about 5 minutes. And it's been, they've been getting about 5,000 hits a week and a lot of feedback. So I'm constantly trying to push the envelope. We are out of time. What I would encourage you to do is do experiment with it. Don't be afraid of it. It's not magic. It's just software trained on data. But also recognize it is not going to take your job. It is not going to do your job, but it can supercharge how you do your job. I did the same talk with Terry's staff back in October. And our business manager pulled me aside the other day and said, you have completely changed the way I do my job. Because now I'm empowered, and now I figure out how to use it right. And I really think it's something every executive should be using, whether you're C-suite, entry level. Be honest about how you're using it. Don't like say, oh, this is my work and pass it all AI off as yours. Just say, hey, I collaborated with generative AI on this. Because I think companies are craving people who understand how to apply this productively. And I got news for you. I've worked with a lot of companies. No company has it right. We're all still in the early stages of figuring this stuff out. But I think the next 10 years are going to be a fun and wild ride. And I think you guys as young alumni are perfectly poised to start adapting it into your workflows and supercharging your careers as a result. You know where to find me. Thank you for your attention and your time. If I can be of any help, don't hesitate to find me at Terry. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. We have time for one question.
You get to pick.
Let's see. Sure.
Grayson roaming, GE Vernova Industrial Software. So you're talking about Coca-Cola. I hear questions about AI from customers all the time.
Yep.
And at the enterprise, the result that I've seen is almost zilch.
Yep.
So I'm very curious if you have identified any enterprise value. At the local level, I have seen huge gains with machine learning, visual, but at the enterprise, the data is so fractured and broken that it's just a complete waste of time almost. So I'm curious what your take is.
Yeah, I think it's gonna, so if we go back to that, the curves. First it's technology, then it's the individuals, then it's the organization, then it's the public policy. I think we're right now on number 2. Individuals are figuring out how to use it in their own work. This isn't to say some companies haven't figured out really great applications, but you're discovering there are issues.
Right.
But I think the first part is use it, and then what companies aren't doing is getting groups to share best practices. Like that's make sure people aren't reinventing the wheel. Get an AI, study. We started doing that in my department. We get together once or twice a month to talk about our innovations in AI. And then once you have multiple people starting to use it, I think then you start to see the economic value. People are going to be more willing to pay it. But that's step 3. Technology, individual, step 3, and then public policy will be the 4th. So everybody's struggling with this, just because what we saw in the book. And incidentally, I did that graph in 2017 before all the AI hype. It hasn't changed because it just takes organizations much longer to adapt to these things.
Awesome.
Okay,
Thank you so much. We do, as a token of our
Oh,
appreciation
thank you so much.
for you, absolutely. We're very grateful to have an AI expert.
AI guy.
Yeah, that's right.
There you go.